So I want to thank everybody for coming to the Magic of Club Sponsorship. I'm Salazar Della Porta. I'm the Club Extension Chair for District 101 this year. And presenting with me is Dave Spence. He's past District Director, past Club Growth Director, but he's also last year's Club Extension Chair. And he serves as the Club Growth Advisor to the team this year. He's been my mentor through this process. Also sharing today will be our special guest, Birgit Starmans, who was the first sponsor, Toastmaster sponsor, I was able to commit to a club for one of our first clubs. And then we have Mickey Crittenden, who started working last year actually with Dave, and then came back around and was able to, working with Lisa, get her club for XL Construction chartered. And Ping Yu Hu, I may not have said that right, but you correct me anytime. But she also started in October, the driving force behind A2C Toastmasters, and we'll talk more about that as we go forward. So I want to lay a couple of groundworks. What do you need to know in order to sponsor a club? Very simple. What type of club is it? What do you want the club to do, to be? And is there an interest for that club? As well as, does a club like it already exist? Because if a club like it exists, then you don't necessarily have to create a new club. You could actually go forward and take a look at that club and see if that will suit your needs. But never let you stop from doing a club. And are you planning to do the work to attract potential members? So when we talk about what types of clubs are there are two primary types we deal with. Community clubs, which means it's open to anybody in a community, there's no restriction. And a company club, which most clubs fall into this or a community category. Now, a company club is pretty obvious. XL Construction, for example, is a company club. Birgit worked with Extreme Networks. That was a company club. Ping Yu has actually worked with a club that has a restriction, but it's a community from a defined base, but it's not a company club. But the other clubs within Toastmasters are college or university, government agency, advanced, military, correctional institution, religious organization, and other institutions. But the two primary ones are community and company, and we'll talk about the difference in a minute. Each category of the club may be either an open club or a closed club. Now, open clubs are the community clubs. They're open to any interested person. But a closed club would be a company club that would say employees of this company. Or for instance, in A2C Toastmasters, it's alumni of the A2C leadership program that can join that club. That's the primary difference in clubs at this point in time. So you have to know who can join, whether there's an interest for it, and what you could do going forward. So Dave, would you like to share a little bit about what it means, the difference between a community club and a company club in terms of what you're looking for if you want to start one or are thinking about starting one?
All right, I think I'm live now. Hi, everyone. It's good to be here. It's good to see everybody. I'm going to throw the question right back. What do some of the people in our audience think is the main differences? And I know this is a bit of a doozy of a question because we have representatives of both types of clubs here, but go ahead and throw out some characteristics.
How about you, Priya? What do you think a community club is, or what do you think a company club is?
A community club is open to people belonging to a certain kind of community, following a certain set of principles, or liking to talk about some set of topics. And a corporate club would be more restricted in the sense that whatever is discussed inside the club may not be for public use.
Yeah, those are some great characteristics. And actually, you did a great job covering kind of the gray area that sometimes forms in between community clubs and corporate clubs, because some of the most successful clubs that we have in our district are corporate clubs, in the sense that they're sponsored by a company, but they're open to people from neighboring companies or from wherever. And so that's an example of a community club that is open. We also have several clubs, and we'll talk a bit more about specialty clubs later, but there are clubs that focus on specific aspects of communication and leadership that are perhaps of more interest to people looking to forward their career in a company. And so there are some clear distinctions, but there are also some gray areas. And the important point, I think, to remember is that you can have community clubs and corporate clubs spanning a very broad range of interests and topics. And when we are thinking about types of clubs to start, we shouldn't restrict ourselves necessarily to one or the other, because there can be a gray area in between.
I'd actually like to jump in on the corporate club, because my very first club in Toastmasters was a corporate club. It was an open one. So some corporations, the company will actually sponsor the members and pay for membership. Mine was not like that, but we never talked about company topics. So I think some companies might do that, especially if it's closed and they don't allow anybody else to come in. But in that particular corporate club, corporate presentations were, not as a rule, but we're pretty much off limits, just because we did them every day and people wanted to get a little bit more experimental to stretch themselves, so they could bring that back. So it wasn't always a corporate topic.
Right, and I want to touch on that for a minute, and thanks for the call out, is that one of the things that we don't touch on because it doesn't exist is what's known as a specialty club. It doesn't exist. But if you listen to what Priya said and you listen to what Birgit said, you realize that you can create a club that has a theme, and that club has a theme. Now, a company might do it and say, this is going to be our theme for our club, and that would be more corporate potentially topics. But even as Priya mentioned, because she wanted to get that in there, Women Lead was a club that began working together in October, and they chartered in January. And their theme is really kind of the upliftment of women. They're open to everybody. Everybody can come, but it's about self-actualization, self-realization, self-expression. But they do a lot of women's topics and women-driven topics. So they have a theme. Now, there's no real such thing as a specialty club, but any club can have a theme and function that way. It can be a community club, a corporate club, a military club, whatever it is. And I think that's one of the things, too, that is a distinction in what was discussed. So I agree with Birgit as well. Many company clubs are just Toastmaster clubs sponsored by a company. Many community clubs are just community clubs that are wide open. But in both cases, those clubs can have a theme and try to follow that. And you see that in one club not represented here, one of our newer clubs also is Women in Product. That is a Sunday meeting club, and the members of that club come from the National Association for Women in Product. They're in product management, different types of the product process. They incorporate product into everything they do. They're icebreakers, they're table topics. So you can also think, when you're thinking of a club, and I'm sorry to launch into this, Dave, but interrupt anytime, but when you're thinking of a club, if you want to have a theme, there's two things to consider. Is one, if you're taking people off the street, we still have to teach them the Toastmaster program. But that doesn't mean we can't have a theme, just like Women in Product does by saying, and bring your product experience into your icebreaker, bring why you like products. But if you're trying to do something totally unique, like a debate club, which there's one out of District 4. We actually have one here in 101, don't we, Dave? Yes. Yes, we do. Yifang said, yes, we do. So then you want to actually have Toastmasters that already know Toastmasters to kind of do that. Now, and those tend to be more advanced clubs where you say you have to be a Toastmaster of another club or something else. But I will say this, and this is just from me. I think for me, the joy in this role this year for me has been the new clubs taking fresh people and fresh energy and fresh ideas and infusing that into the Toastmaster role. So I believe if anyone wants to start a club, they should start with the idea of, I don't really want to do something special, but I just want to get some of that energy and maybe add a theme to the meeting. It doesn't have to be a specialty club of any kind. It's just my thought. And I don't know if that took far away from where you were going, Dave, but it was the one thought that struck me. But Priya, I want to point out, I got your women lead in there. I know you wanted that.
Free advertising for all our clubs in District 101.
Yeah.
I think, Salazar, the takeaway here is really that you can start a Toastmasters club around any theme or interest or professional goal or personal goal. When we are thinking about the sorts of Toastmasters clubs to start or trying to come up with an idea of a club to start, don't think narrow, think broad, because if you have an interest in, for example, reading books, we just started a club called Readership 101 that is comprised of people who like to read books. If you like to go hiking on the weekends, we don't have a hiking club in District 101, but I know of several hiking clubs in other districts. So whatever it is potentially a seed for a Toastmasters club. And what we would like at the district level, as well as, just to help people personally, is to hear all those ideas and see whether we can do something with them.
And the key thing when you approach us too, it goes back to what Dave said, is like, we're not in the business of building the club for you. That's not what we're here for. What we are in the business of helping you with is, one, what are the requirements to charter the club? What are ways of doing outreach? Where do you plan to go out and find your community, find your community to join this club? And if you already have those ideas, for instance, we were approached by the Harvard Business School alumni, which they never moved forward. They decided not to, but they wanted to go out to their Harvard Business School alumni and potentially form a club. Now that didn't come to fruition, but it's an idea of, they already had a pocket of people. Mickey and her arrangement had a community of employees. When Birgit went to work with Extreme Networks, they had a community of employees. And also Ping Yu had a community of alumni that they could go to. But when we start community clubs and we do something, we have to say, where are we going to find our interested people? And we have to think about that, not just have the good idea. I agree with Dave. Think outside the box, but then think, how can I reach those people? And certainly we have some ideas we can assist people with in that. But I want to make sure that we understand one other thing before we go forward and hear from our sponsors. Let me come back to this. And that is not only who can join, but always remember who can be a member. In Toastmasters, we have to be 18 or older, but we can't restrict according to race, color, creed, or ethnic origin, sexual orientation, marital or veteran status, or mental disability. Now, when women lead, for instance, Priya's club that we first got started with, they wanted to have a women-only club, but they couldn't because they weren't drawing from women-only organizations, whereas Women in Product could have a women-only club because their membership was restricted to members of Women in Product, if you understand. So Women Lead is actually open to everybody. And they do have some males that are members of the club. That's not the issue, but they can still have a theme. Women in Product have the theme, but they're restricted only to Women in Product members. So that's the difference. So when we look at starting a club, we can't say, I want to have a club that's going to be, for instance, in Mickey's case, I'm going to, with mothers that have children less than a year old. Okay, well, where are you going to draw your membership from? If you draw it from an organization that has mothers with children less than a year old, you can make that the restriction or the requirement for the membership. But if you just say, I'm going to go out to my community center and go out to all this, you're going to have men in there too. So it's an important consideration when you think of creating your club. Any thoughts on that, Dave? No, you don't want that.
I think you did a pretty good job explaining it, Salazar. Toastmasters is a California a registered nonprofit, and so we have to abide by all of the same regulations that other corporations and nonprofits in California abide by. And in this case, it's great that we have that we are allowed to have such diversity in our clubs. So, go with it.
And I want to add
it's a positive thing.
Oh, I'm sorry. Just thank you. I want to add one more thing, because people consider this a shortfall, but it's not. Every one of these clubs we're talking about today are going to be an online club. Out of the 11 clubs we've chartered this year, 10 of them are planning to stay online clubs. And so when you say, where do I find my community? We find it online. We go to Meetup, we go to Facebook, we go to find, if we're looking for certain types of people, we can explore and say, okay, here's a forum where I can reach out to these type of people with that type of interest and see if I can draw interest in my community. When Women Lead, Priya's club started out, they actually put together a committee, actually back in July, a foundational committee of women who came together and started doing all the planning, the outreach. They probably planned for 2 or 3 months before they did any execution, and they did their demo meeting in October. So they did a lot of pre-planning of how we outreach and reach all these women. I think you had like 49 or 50 people at your demo meeting. So use the online to find your community. You don't have to worry about finding them in your physical neighborhood anymore. We've got the whole internet. That being said, I'd like to actually, Yifeng, I'm going to just defer to you for a moment. If there's anything you'd like to add before we go to our panelists and get their impressions of what their experience was and what they learned and what they might do differently if they could.
Thank you, Solosa. I wanted to ask you a question. Maybe I can go together with the QA part. You mentioned when I have an idea or anyone has an idea in chartering a club, we will first form an idea. For example, I form an idea, say, remodeling house. Now, I go out of my community. I see 5 or 6 of them are remodeling their house. I want to recruit them as my club members. However, I limited to those 5 members. And you also mentioned I can go online to recruit. Could you provide more tools that I can recruit more people online?
Sure. Well, the 2 primary ones that I would state that have seemed to be successful, they're not the only ones, but certainly I recommend you start with Nextdoor. Nextdoor is going to be geographical to your community. But for instance, let's say I've now talked to Priya. Priya and I don't live co-located near each other. Priya's interested in my club. Priya can go on her Nextdoor, I can go on my Nextdoor, and we can do outreach saying, look, we're looking at forming this club called Women Lead. It's about leadership. It's about excelling. It's about, well, I don't remember all the acronyms of LEAD, but it is an acronym. And Priya, if you know it, you can jump in with it just to give us guidance. But I didn't want to put you on the spot. But what I'm saying is we can both do that. Nextdoor is a wonderful tool for getting response and stirring interest. Facebook is also another wonderful tool. And there's a third one I'll get to as well. But Facebook and Nextdoor cost nothing. And we start doing our outreach, we need to start with no cost to low cost. We don't want to spend money. The next one that's good after that is Meetup. However, if you don't already have a Meetup account or you're not connected in Meetup some way, Meetup does cost. But that's another one where you can go out and search for different types of communities you could reach out to. So those would be my 3 recommendations, but I would always start with Nextdoor and Facebook because they cost nothing. If you already have a LinkedIn account of your own and you want to start something that may be a little more business centric, then you could use LinkedIn. But if you're a community club, LinkedIn's not necessarily where you draw a community. Nextdoor, Facebook are more community, Meetup are more community. LinkedIn is more business centric, more corporate centric. So those would be my recommendations for outreach. Yifeng, does that help answer your question?
Yes, that helped a lot. To me, yeah, I think maybe I should do some homework. I should promote my club, my idea in different types of materials, such as flyer, video, slides, and then use Nextdoor, Facebook, this cost-free tool regularly.
The thing I'd say about Nextdoor though is make sure you put it in the correct category. If it's not in the correct category on Nextdoor, it will be taken down. They're pretty adamant about what category you file in. Is it the community feed? Is it for sale? Is it, so they're just make sure it's in the right category.
Yeah, usually community seems to be a non-problem thing. We're thinking of forming this thing, and then people who are interested, you're not selling, don't talk about fees. You do fees at the meetings. You don't do fees there because then they'll think you're selling. So thanks for bringing that in, Birgit. But Priya did point out.
If you have fees out there, it'll be removed.
Right.
Yeah.
If you have lead, I'll get right to you, Lisa. But I want to point out that Priya did put that lead is leadership, empowerment, diversity, and advancement. So I just wanted to point that out. Back to you, Lisa. I'm sorry.
Just as a note, as a user, as a participant, Meetup, Meetup is free. It's just if you want to hold a Meetup group, you have to pay. So as a user, it's free.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for clarifying that.
As many existing Meetup groups as you want as a free user.
And using it as a research tool to find those groups is excellent then, especially since it's free. That's what you want to do, is find those communities.
Well, I'm going to put my district hat on for a second. The district actually pays for a Meetup channel.
Well, for clubs, for
once you have a club, not while you're trying to form one, but once you have one to expand it, that can be done through the district, and it's paid for by the district.
I understand, but for those individuals who are just starting out, they may not be able to do that. So, but let's go to Birgit, whom we haven't heard from tonight, to tell us Birgit is our current public relations manager for District 101, among many other things. She's been a long-time Toastmaster, but she also was the first Toastmaster sponsor we were able to assign to a club. We got contacted by Toastmasters International about this club that was trying to form. They said it belongs to District 101. It was called Extreme Networks. And we were looking for a sponsor, and Birgit stepped up to the plate. So Birgit, how about letting us know what that was like stepping into that role, experiencing that particular club, any challenges or things you might do differently?
I would say it was a very interesting experience because, I'm a member of community clubs, and I had been in the past a member of an open corporate club. So this was my first experience actually with a closed corporate club, where really the only members can be employees of the company. I think it was also the first time that we chartered a club that was online for the district. Right. So you're laughing because we had to just jump through a couple of hoops to make sure that it was actually assigned to District 101. I think there are a couple of, I don't want to say challenges, because in the business world, I think we're all used to meeting online now, and we're all used to having different time zones. But I think when it came to communication of getting demo teams together, et cetera, it was one of those things where we had to highlight what time zone it was in, because if we would get a message from somebody from Extreme that happened to be sitting on the East Coast, they would use East Coast time zone. If it happened to be from the president, it would be Central. If it happened to be coming from a member in corporate headquarters, it was Pacific, because they're in San Jose. So it was one thing where I think I had to kind of preach to the choir, but if we don't know who those people are within Extreme, they really need to call out what time zone they're talking about in terms of the meeting time zone. And I think the club did standardize on East Coast for whatever reason. But at the beginning, you had to know where everybody was based in order to figure out what time they were talking about, depending on who is the sender of the email. So that was very interesting. That being said, I work in a corporate environment, so did they. Nobody had an issue with that. So that's, I think, a very positive thing. It was the first one that was chartered completely online. So I think in terms of the charting process, we learned quite a bit, together with Solazar, about how to do that with TI. And I think that benefited some of the other clubs that were moving on. And they have definitely decided that they're going to stay online. So they have no interest in meeting in person. Their headquarters are here in San Jose. They've got members in San Jose, but they also have members on the East Coast in Raleigh and in Atlanta, and also in Chicago. So I would say they are definitely scattered all over the place, even though it's the same company.
And Texas
So,
too. They have those Jasmine.
Oh, that's right. That's
that,
right. I forgot about Texas. So yeah, but I would say it definitely mirrors a corporate environment. So anybody who gets involved in that, if you don't have a quote unquote normal corporate job, and I don't know what normal is these days anymore, but I have a normal corporate job. I'm used to translating time zones at the drop of a hat, but I think that that's something to take into consideration, and also to make sure that you are available. So if the time zone here might be different than what's being published just because of that time zone conversion, I think that would be very interesting. I think it was tougher to, I mean, I can always give tips and tricks of how they could find more members. I think something I would do differently next time is sit down with maybe one or two of the members and have them explain to me what their corporate programs are, just so I could give more direct feedback. This is the kind of information that you want to give to HR, for example, so that you can get people as part of their onboarding saying this is a great training opportunity. And they're in a situation where Extreme is actually paying their charter fee, and they're paid their dues for the first year. So knowing that, I could give better recommendations. I mean, I just kind of took it from my previous experience, but I think they have some different internal organizations. So being a little bit more aware of that. Something that I found was very critical also is to kind of give them pre-training before training, because when they need to start figuring out which officer is going to do what, they requested some training. And something that I wasn't expecting, but it was actually a nice side benefit to get to know everybody, was that a lot of the folks wanted a one-to-one meeting with me before they did their first role, not just speaker, but any kind of a role. Even the SAA was very shy and wanted to talk about, well, how do I do this? Because they had this vision of, I have to put on this weird speaker hat and I can't be myself.
Okay,
and
I'm going to move on though. So thanks, Birgit, because that was very complete. And I know you've got so much more, but one of the things that Birgit also did was put on a 7-1 officer training, and that's what she's talking about, before they could go to officer training. So that was part of it. And the one-to-one meetings are wonderful. But I do want to make sure we get to Mickey and Dave, because Mickey, you started last year by interacting with Dave, didn't you? Did some outreach to him. And what led you to start a club or want to start a club, and what led you to kind of pursue getting a club going?
Thanks, great questions. So we wanted at XL Construction, we wanted our employees to have an opportunity to practice their public speaking, work on their public speaking skills in a safe environment. And being in training and development, I see a lot of the development plans for our employees, and that's something that continued to come up. Being in construction, and a lot of our project engineers and our project managers have to deal with people every day. They have to lead meetings. They have to do presentations for clients and subcontractors. So the theme was to provide a training opportunity for people to work on their public speaking. So instead of reinventing the wheel and doing that ourselves, I actually had participated in Toastmasters early in my career, and it did wonders. It was a community organization. And so that's kind of what led me to explore Toastmasters. And then I reached out via the website, and Dave responded super quick. And we had a couple phone conversations, and he broke it down to me on how to get started and what I need to do and how to really set it up for success. And the key thing that he had said is generating enough interest quickly and moving forward in the process as quickly as you can to have people excited about it. So that was kind of our initial conversation, and we brainstormed outreach and what really it is, what's in it for the employee by joining. So those were some of the initial conversations we had, and Dave was a huge help. So.
And you sold that to management? You approached management with that?
Yes. So with the materials that Dave provided, the flyers, that's what I approached my director with, and talked about what it would cost the company And fortunately, we had the budget to charter the club as well as pay members dues. And we had originally drafted an email out to the company and generated interest. And we had a really great response from employees. And initially it was going to be an in-person club, but the pandemic happened. So we made it online. And I think the silver lining in that is we were able to get more people to commit to joining the club, having it online.
So the pandemic actually created a split in your thing. Last year you dealt with Dave, and then because of the pandemic and COVID, you stopped. Said, okay,
yes,
we need to see what we're going to do here. Then you reached back out to him, I believe in September, might have been August or September. Yep. And he said, hey, I'm no longer doing that. You have to talk to this other guy. And,
yeah. It was all a smooth hand, a great experience with both people.
And then we were fortunate enough, we also got Lisa, who was able to work with you. And I wanted to ask Lisa what that was like walking into this. You know, Mickey had laid all this foundation, and what was it like for you, and what was your experience?
Yeah, I got a really good deal on this sponsorship of Mickey's Club. First of all, Solazar made it a very soft landing. And thank you. I think I was only involved for a couple of months, but we did some pre-meetings with the leadership team of the club. We did a pre-meeting to talk about their roles, and they did all their reading. They're really good at their homework. So they did all the reading of exactly what their roles entailed before we got into the meeting. We did some little detail, and then I met with Mickey a couple times separately. And then I would show up for the meetings, and we would kind of tweak what they were doing in the meetings based on so I would give them a lot more feedback than I would normally. I was always the general evaluator. So I would always give a lot more feedback than I would normally give, let's say, in my home club. And they took everything to heart. They were extremely serious about making this club work, and everyone was raising their hand for the roles, and the roles were all being filled easily. They were definitely taking this seriously. I don't know if they're all being somehow evaluated in their jobs for this, but it feels like they were all in. Every member, and Mickey is
lots
fabulously.
Of engineers.
Yeah. So it was really clear after listening to a few of the speeches, they were already memorizing their speeches, and they were very analytical. And that's part of, I tried to bring a little levity to the group because they're very serious about Toastmasters. And I know every club has its own vibe. I've been able to visit clubs all over the world since we went onto Zoom. And I've definitely seen some corporate clubs that have a more serious vibe. I understand. It's almost like part of your job. But I did think they took it seriously, and I gave them some tips. And at one point I told Mickey, I said, you can have a theme of the week. She said, we're not ready for that yet. It's like, all right, you are the leader. I give you leadership, not a problem. But maybe eventually we'll have the theme of the week, and then there could be more levity behind the theme of the week. But it was a really fun club to work with. What I discovered my strength was, because I am naturally an instructor. I've instructed everywhere from kindergartners to adult education, and taking little bits and pieces that I've learned over the last 5 years in Toastmasters and handing it off to another club seems like a natural act for me. There is a lot that is handed off person to person in Toastmasters, and this seems like a really natural role if you love handing off knowledge to someone else.
That's wonderful. Now then we have, of course, you. Did I say that? How did I do on that?
Perfect.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. So you started your process in October, but what was your journey of saying, I want to create a Toastmasters club for the alumni of A2C?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So first, as Salazar has mentioned, our club is also a purely online club, and we are a community club, but we restrict our members to the alumni of the A2C leadership training program. So a little bit of history about this club. Back in October, a lot of our classmates, students, we share the same desire to improve our public speaking skills, because as non-native English speakers, we know how hard it is to communicate effectively and clearly in English. We know it's even harder to speak in front of people in English with confidence and gusto. So a bunch of our fellow classmates who used to be involved in the Toastmaster clubs, we said, oh, why don't we initiate a meeting series that mimic the Toastmasters meeting schedule so that our classmates can benefit from it as well. So we did that in October, and for like maybe 4 times, 5 times in total, we have a very good feedback from our classmates. And then in January, we noticed that in the Toastmaster International website, there is an incentive to charter this club without charter fee and new member fee. And at that point, this incentive is a trigger for us to decide to charter a club officially. And the primary reason for us to charter this club is that we know in our previous meetings, those meetings, everybody has a very good experience, and it was a very supportive and friendly environment. This is a good thing, but we also want the meeting to be more structured. We also want to get more support from the Toastmaster International and more support from the district, from the division, from the area. So, and also we want to give our classmates a structured pathways for them to learn, to grow. So that's why we decided to charter it officially. And in January, we reached out to Toastmasters International, and we got matched with Salazar and Yifang. And then our journey has begun since January. So I think for our club, since I'm not only the sponsor of the club, but also the president of the club, I think there are 2 challenges of our charter process. The first one is that I feel it's hard for me to find club officers. So we don't have any trouble to attract new members to join our team, but we do have trouble to find club officers because most of our members, if not all, they are pretty new to Toastmasters. So they don't know what a club officer means and what their responsibilities are and what the benefits of being a club officer will be. The second challenge is the application forms. There are 2 ways to fill in the application forms. One is apply online. The other one is to download all those forms and then fill them in and then submit to the Toastmaster International. With guidance from Yifang and Salazar, we figured out the second way is a better option than applying online. So throughout this process, Salazar and Yifang has provided us tremendous support, and we have multiple email exchanges, and we even scheduled live meetings to discuss our concerns, our questions, and they have answered all of our questions with great patience and with great expertise in how to charter a club. So we are really grateful for that.
Well, thank you. Thank you for all that. But actually, I do want to clarify one thing. It was really the application for the charter. It was better to download them and do them that way than it was to do the charter membership applications online. And actually, Mickey's also the president of her club. And as they got chartered, she went on maternity leave. So we had to also work that out. And Lisa helped them with that as well. But Birgit, you mentioned something, and that's why I wanted to stop you there, because I wanted to also go to Yifang, because when she sponsored Sunbasket Toastmasters and continues to mentor them, she had an experience similar to yours. And Yifang, I'd like you to talk a little bit about how you would connect with the speakers, the evaluators, the meeting functionaries, and the officers prior to the meeting, and the work you did as a sponsor, which was very, very thorough as well. Please.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a very, very rewarding experience for me personally. When I started to sponsor the Sunbasket, I started to know them. Then at every meeting, at the end of every meeting, the club sponsor, the club president will recruit meeting roles for next meeting. And sometimes at the very beginning, people may hesitate, but they are very motivated. They will still say, okay, I will do it. And then between this meeting and the next meeting, we have 1 week. During this week, I will find out a time, like 45 minutes. I will say all the meeting roles, I will do briefing with you. And then I will drag the VPE with me. I said, VPE, please join this session. I did 2 briefing sessions. And then I told the VPE ahead of time. I said, I will do it 2 times. The 3rd time you do it, I will sit next to you observing. And then the 3rd time he did it. He did it greatly. And then the 4th time I didn't go. I said, you do it yourself. Maybe this is related to Lisa's experience as an instructor. You want to teach people some knowledge. You want them to apply it to their application. And then I also tell VPE, in the future, you want to offload this work to Toastmaster of that day, that week. So everyone will rotate, take these responsibilities. That's the meeting role part. And the membership recruit part, to be honest, I have not involved too much because this is a closed corporate club. The VPM is in their HR department. The secretary is also in their HR department. So they take care of that part. The club office.
I was going to ask you about the officers. Yes, go ahead, please.
Yeah, club officers. I attend the club officers meetings every time. Whenever they have questions to me, I will respond to them.
And so what did you, Birgit, what did you find with the officers of Extreme Networks? Like you said, you were often meeting one-on-one with different functionaries as well as officers. What did you find about their readiness or willingness and what you felt you needed to do more or do less?
I think they were very ready, actually. I found them to be very experienced already. So once people got over the initial hurdle of volunteering to speak, and Table Topics was a huge help with that. Once they got over that first hurdle, they were actually really gung-ho. So yeah, and they really started letting their personalities shine through. So I thought that was a really good thing. So I would say the officers started managing themselves fairly early on. They needed to understand the roles. And one of the things that we talked about in that 7-in-1 training that you mentioned, Salazar, was where the linkages are, right? So where does VPPR need to work with VPM, for example, right? Where does VPPR need to work with secretary? So, you know, how do these interrelate? How do secretary and treasurer communicate? So I think helping them discover those linkages was very helpful because before that they were a little bit siloed. So I think that's where the conversations helped with that regard as well.
Thanks. Dave, do you have any suggestions on some of the things that have been mentioned, the things that people did, or even like in Ping Yu's case where perhaps not having the people step up to the officer roles effectively? Do you have any suggestions from your experience that you might suggest to potential sponsors or current sponsors?
Let me go ahead. Go ahead, Birgit.
No, that's okay. Go for
it. So a couple of things that came to mind as I was sitting here listening. Going back to the club that Mickey started, when we first started talking way back at the very beginning, one of the potential hurdles that we discussed was whether in a construction company there would actually be enough people in the office to form a club on any given week, because in your case, Mickey, a lot of people were out and about during the day. And so if there are any silver linings to the cloud that is COVID-19, at least in the Toastmasters world, one of them is online clubs, because now we have an opportunity to draw from people, not just in our local community, although that is still certainly an option and something we should consider. But we have the opportunity to go worldwide, or at least help institutions or companies that have people traveling around and situated all over the country to be part of a Toastmasters club that they may not have been able to have been a part of before. So I think we shouldn't underestimate the advantage that being allowed to meet online gives us, and as we've all said, I think it's something that will continue, long after COVID-19 is over.
Mm-hmm.
Mickey, do you have anything to add to that? regarding your experiences there?
Yeah, we do have a very dispersed workforce. Our people are out all over the Bay Area at different construction jobs, and our home base is in Milpitas. So you can imagine that people aren't going to commute from San Francisco from their job site to the Milpitas office to go to a Toastmasters meeting. And that was a big concern that David and I talked about, is how are we going to reach our teams, the people who really, really need it, not just our office or our support staff. So going online really allowed for our job sites to be involved in this club, and having that meeting every week has helped people feel like they get off the island that they're on and they feel more connected with each other and more connected with the company or headquarters, if you will, because sometimes they can feel really siloed out at their job site. But also with COVID-19, I think working remotely, we've all felt sometimes that we're on this island and we don't get to interact and hear people's story, or even know the new people that the companies have, or our company has recruited. So this really created an atmosphere for people to get to know each other, to interact, and also made it available to our project teams. So the online thing was a game changer for us.
You know, Mickey mentioned something, Dave, that we didn't mention earlier too, which is an advantage in a corporate club, or even sometimes in, some type of company style club anyway, is that often you get to meet and interact with people in other departments you wouldn't otherwise interact or meet. And you get this broader appreciation of your own organization just by having that experience. So certainly that's an advantage of something that XL Construction went through with creating the club.
Yeah, I picked up on that too. Even when we met in person, that's one of the things that people would often say was a benefit, that they got to interact with employees that they would never see. And then when they did have to interact with them in as part of their job, there was already that relationship there. So it's definitely a plus. Just one other brief comment about getting people to take on officer roles and even meeting roles. I mean, for me, Toastmasters is all about transferable skills. We practice skills within our Toastmasters clubs in a safe place that we then take to put to work in our jobs or at home or in whatever charity we're involved in the weekends. And so when you start to think about taking on roles in your club in terms of the transferable skills that they will help you develop and polish and get better at, then it becomes an easier sell. And honestly, in Toastmasters, really where it's at is being a club officer, because that is one level of leadership and communication training and just general life training skills that you get by being a club officer that goes above and beyond showing up at meetings every week and taking on the regular roles. So I would, we always talk about how being a club officer is an opportunity to develop a particular skill. And we have a document called the Transferable Skills Matrix or sheet that we can pass out. But, for example, if you want to be a better photographer, and maybe you have never used a camera in your life, become VP PR of your club and start taking pictures to post on social media and use that as a way to develop your photography skills. And so thinking of it in terms, to think of it in those terms makes it an easier sell. We're not asking for professional photographers to be VP PR. We're just asking for people who want to learn about public relations or scheduling or leadership or whatever it is, and that's why you become a club officer. So transferable skills is the way to think about it and the way to encourage participation, I think.
So Priya, you've been sitting here soaking up all of this information, and you have your experience with Women Lead as well. Are there any questions or issues you'd like to present? or ask?
Yeah, so I am I'm a VP of membership for Women Lead, and the one problem that we frequently, or at least we face, is that how to retain the members and how to bring in new people, because the initial interest fades off in about 3 to 4 months. Then even the existing members, some of them don't come for the meeting, and then they don't want to take roles, and so on. So how do you keep the momentum building? That is something that that we've all been facing. And the other thing is coming up with a theme for every meeting. So we have a theme for every meeting. So far, there has not been an issue, uh, but when you have to come up with new themes, that has been a some sort of challenge, and we are working around it, but we are trying to see how better we can handle this situation, maintaining the interest, getting new members, and encouraging them to participate.
I have a question for you when you talked about the themes. Is your VPE or your president assigning the theme? Is that what the issue is? Or does the Toastmaster select a theme for the meeting?
Usually it's a group effort. So all of us decide in the previous meeting what our theme will be for the next 2 or 3 meetings. And we have these officers meeting where all the officers meet together once a month, and we decide the theme for the remaining weeks. So that is how we have been coming up with themes. But do you have any ideas on how some of the other clubs are doing it? Maybe
I'm going to say one thing, and then I'll throw it open. I know Dave or Yifeng, if you want to come, Birgit or Lisa, or one of the things I would suggest is that you stop having the committee pick the theme. Allow your Toastmasters to pick the theme. You'll get more variety, because the committee's creating a box and then saying, everybody work in this box. So going back to what Dave said earlier, think outside that box. Let the Toastmaster select the theme. And if they want to select, black licorice as their theme or something like that, let them do it. Okay. Don't be so heavy. You can still say, let's talk about our empowerment, our lead, or anything else. But our theme today is black licorice. How have you led every time you've had black licorice? How has it helped your leadership? Play with it. Be more playful with it. Those are my thoughts. Yeah. I don't know. Birgit, Lisa, Yifeng, Dave, thoughts?
So in my club, and we've been a President's Distinguished Club for I don't even know how long, we have the Toastmaster declare a theme, and they can run with it in a number of different ways. And one way is that you let your table topics master know what the theme is, and they devise the questions around the theme. And another is, if you have the energy behind it, you can ask every person who speaks in the agenda to give you some little clue about how they relate to the theme. And then when you introduce them with what they've told you. So that reinforces the theme throughout the entire meeting.
And one other thing that I think stimulates attendance more than anything else is trying to maximize participation wherever possible for the people at the club. Keep them involved. So passive things, like I'm a big anti-workshop people at clubs, but passive things like workshops are informational. I'm not doing anything. So engage me, keep me involved somehow.
I would say use resources just external to yourself, because I think that keeps it more creative, to Salazar's point. You know that every single day of the year is a weird Hallmark holiday of some sort. And I've done this for a couple of my clubs. Yeah, so National Wear Red Day was February 5th, and I'm not sure why that's a different day than Valentine's Day on the 14th, and Happy Sweethearts Day, which is yet another day. But you can have a lot of fun with those kinds of things, because every day has about at least 4, if not 6 or 7 different holidays. So that's an easy one. When's our next meeting? Let's see. Let me pick from these 4 different holidays. Yeah, just to get your mind thinking about things like that.
So one more thing, I'd just
go ahead.
Add Salazar real quickly. I would say make sure our VPEs are actually assigning roles for meetings. There's 2 reasons for that. One is we're inviting people to come by letting them have a role. The second and maybe more important one is that we're making sure that everybody in the club gets an opportunity to take on every role within the club on a regular rotating basis. Because again, it's all about participation and transferable skills. So if somebody is speaking all the time and never doing any of the other roles, they're not getting an opportunity to learn and practice the leadership and communication skills that comes from being Toastmaster or an evaluator or whatever it is. So one of the ways to keep people engaged is by making sure they experience the full value that Toastmasters has to offer through participating completely in all of the roles that our clubs have to offer.
I also want to jump back to something Lisa said, because, and this is a bias on my part, I also think your general evaluator is key in your meetings. The general evaluator needs to say, you know, I've been to these 5 meetings and I don't think this works as well. Maybe we should try something different. I think you were really well in this role, but it doesn't work in the whole meeting or something. The general evaluators need to really say, here's what I think might work better. Now, remember, when we evaluate, it's only an opinion. It's not expert. It's an opinion, regardless of who we are. But I also think your general evaluators are critical to keeping the meetings functional and ready by being open to what they think might be able to be different. Not that it's wrong, just different.
Yeah, I think I got enough inputs from the people here. So I'm going to try out putting the theme as a common discussion at the end of the meeting, so that people feel more involved and they feel accepted that the theme that they are suggesting is being worked on. And also the other one was the general evaluator keeps track of how each person is doing in the different roles and pointing out to problems. So, but it still has not answered my question of how to attract new members. I know you said about Nextdoor and community and putting it out there. Any other ideas on those lines to attract new members?
Well, who's your VPPR?
VPPR is Khushbu.
Okay, so you as VPM, you're VPM, right?
Yes, yes.
The two of you need to become a tag team of working together. So the outreach that your VPPR does is about getting people interested, you know, and then you want people to show up at the meeting, and then you want to embrace them as your long lost relative. And make them feel welcome. So you want your guests to feel welcome. You want to find where you're getting guests from. And no one issue is going to bring you people. You know, somebody shifted. No one issue is going to bring you people. So it's not like if you do Nextdoor, you're going to get 10 people. If you do Nextdoor, you might get 1 person. Meetup, you might get 1 person. Facebook, you might get 1 person. So you've got to find out what it is that you're selling to the broadest audience of people you want to make part of your community. And the other thing that I suggest, and other people may have another idea, we have 2 minutes to go, so I'll make it quick. The other thing is, what makes your community different? Because people join clubs because they like the community in that club. So what makes yours different? And that's your selling point. And those are the people you want.
Okay.
I call it a club personality. Every club has a different personality.
They do. Everyone do. So
one way we attract new members, or what has worked for us, and it may be a little bit different because we're a corporate club, but we have asked that our members bring a friend at some point, and we've kind of offered an incentive program for that. So it's a bring a guest day, or if you bring a guest, you get XL bucks, or we'll recognize you in an email or something like that. So having maybe bring a friend type of theme one time could be helpful as well.
Sure.
Because I think people want to go somewhere where they know somebody.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit easier to attract people if they know somebody who goes to the club rather than it's a brand new thing.
And also share our own story with our friends. What transferable skills we have learned in Toastmasters has transformed me, has transformed us. Then this transferable skill may help you as well.
Yeah, thanks for all those inputs. I'll work on a couple of them and update.
Okay, and building on all of that, every time somebody's doing something, ask them to bring someone, one of their friends, to see them do it when they're giving a speech. First time Toastmaster, first time something. That's a great idea, Mickey, for bringing that out. I'm going to go into a wrap up, but Ping Yu, I'm going to send you transferable skills and we'll talk more about your officers and stuff like that. So I'm going to send you that as a follow on to the meeting that Dave mentioned, so you don't go.
Sorry, I didn't make it clear. I thought that was challenge, but we have already solved the challenge.
Oh,
like exactly
okay.
using the transferable skills, that methodology to attract club officers to join me.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank
there
you.
You go. Thanks so much. And Dave, I'd like to give you the opportunity, if you have any final wrap up you would like to add to this session. I'd be honored if you brought us to a close. I know I'm putting you on the spot, but.
Well, in the interest of time, I'll be brief, but I want to just thank everyone again for taking time to come and share what we have all experienced in the journey that is starting a new club. I think, you know, again, it is really a transferable skill that we can take these experiences and put them to use elsewhere, and that's one of the most important benefits of doing this. If anybody has any questions, or if there's anything that we didn't answer tonight or you'd like to talk more about, don't hesitate to reach out to Salazar or Yifeng or I, and we can continue this conversation long after we stop the record button. But back to you, Salazar.
Thanks. And Yifeng, I'm going to also, as my boss and club growth director, if you have anything to add.
Thank you very much for attending this event. I learned a lot from you. Thank you. Back to you, Salazar.
Well, thank you, everyone. You can just go to new club at d101tm.org to send any questions. Just send it. I'll get it to Yifeng. I'll get it to Dave, and that'll come to me. And I want to thank all of you for participating tonight and adding your experience to this. It was really wonderful. And thank you for your patience through the whole process. So blessings to all of you. And thank you for making it all worthwhile.
Thank you, Salazar. Thank you.
Thank you, Salazar.
Thank you, Salazar.